So joining us are three distinguished Sabahan creatives, filmmaker Nadira Irana, singer-songwriter Velvet Ado, who happens to be my cousin, and artisan Jessica Lintanga. Before we start, I just want to say that secara kebetulan, it's not intentional that all three panelists are women. It was only when we finalized the list of panelists, then we realized, oh, it's an all-women panelist. So it's kind of cool juga lah kan. But each of them are diverse in backgrounds, but united in passion and arts. Let's start with a question to all. When people hear creative industry, what do you think they still misunderstood about it? Nadira?
So I think the mistake that maybe people make is that they think that the creative industries is a luxury, but actually it's not. I mean, when the arts is second nature to humans, to people, and it is such an important part of what brings our community together, what deepens our understanding of ourselves and our connection to land. But when we talk about the creative industry, again, the creative industry is actually essential, I would say, to not just the economy, but the issue of nation building. And this is something that macam Sabah hasn't fully harnessed yet in terms of the creative industry. And a lot of people might think na macam, oh, kita punya industry creative ni kan mungkin di Sabah masih ketinggalan kalau kita mau banding dengan macam like other places, Kuala Lumpur ka ataupun in the region. But actually, the truth of it, if I think of what all Sabahans should know about the creative industries, is that I believe that the creative industries in Sabah was sabotaged. Because we actually did have a creative industries, like the beginnings, the smatterings of the creative industry, yang mula from the 50s when the BBC, introduced these technologies like radio and cameras and that kind of thing. Sabahans were making our own documentaries in the 1970s. But after the National Cultural Policy in 1971, then suddenly as a nation, it was decided for everybody that the main language, culture, and adat should be around Malay culture, Malay language. And this is not to say siapa yang jahat or bamuskan, because when it comes to nation building, it's always a series of trial and error. But most definitely because
At the same time, and I have talked about this person, I'm very much this, these creative industry policies, national policies, and dictated whether or not I was able to see this. Whether or not sasawayan sa pagladyo kita punya sejarah dan ada budaya, and it made things very, very challenging for a lot of the Sabah creatives to actually come up at one point. And it's not just that the Sabah creatives in Sabah and struggle, but we also have a green dream where a lot of Sabahans were forced to kind of just go outside of Sabah, to be able to develop our skills. But we are entering a new era at the moment, which we should all be very excited about. And I would have to say that we also would have had this creative economy, under the ministerial portfolio. Also, if not for, people like my Persatuan Sabah as well, for lobbying so hard for this. I've been in the industry 16 years now, and, it took a lot of work and it took a lot of grit from Sabahans who were passionate about this to make it happen. So it's a very special thing to be here tonight, to hear people speak and consider our creative industries seriously, because it's not just about raising our artists. What our artists do best is that we can raise and unite community. And dalam ans katidakan, a lot of Sabahans have this feeling, and it is through our artists that they can see and love and communicate with one another. So that's why a creative industry is so important. Bukan saja kita mau bikin film yang dapat berjaya dan dapat buncang and get our financial returns, but macam mana kita boleh menanamkan macam cinta dan juga identity Sabah dalam hati semua orang.
For Velvet herself, like you've been in the industry for 20 years bahkan. Jadi apa yang selalu salah anggap orang pasal creative industry?
You mean in Sabah?
Yes.
Orang-orang yang dalam creative industry ini adalah orang-orang yang Beduin. And whoever's in the industry, diorang ni mau glamour. Tidak kira lah, you as a singer, you as a songwriter, ataupun filmmaker, ka artisan kan. itulah perception there, I think lah most of kita. Tapi kan I think the creative industry for almost interpret kan, it's actually an imagination yang kita tukar menjadi art, dan dari itu art dia boleh kasih buka peluang pekerjaan, bisnes, dan selepas itu dia kasih uplift kita punya community dari segi ekonomi. Tapi sekarang di Sabah, macam I think it's unachievable yet. Because whoever's in the creative industry, if you ask me, most of them have a day job. So, membuat lagu is actually just a passion project. Sebab kenapa? I'm saying this on my POV lah. Sebab membuat lagu, you need money for marketing, semua. So, kalau di Sabah, it's still susah lah sikit.
That's a good one there. Turning imagination into art. Jess, you've been in the industry for 8 tahun kan? Setiap itu kalah 8 tahun. So, apa yang bisa orang cakap bila
Untuk saya punya part sebagai artisan kan saya bikin craft kangen. Biasanya orang ramai kan dia pikir kami sebagai yang dalam seni pertukangan ni, dorang tengok ini apa yang kami buat ini kan cuma hobi. Sekedar isi masa lapang, dia bukan sumber pendapatan. Tapi dorang tidak pikir masa yang kami invest untuk bikin tu apa? Kami punya craft, idea, apa, cost bahan semua, itu semua tidak kena kira. So itulah yang dorang itu silap. Saya rasa itu saja lah dari saya.
So, kira dia macam people macam tidak faham the works behind itu apa kan? Itu usaha lah behind itu hasil dia. Because people macam biasa nampak hasil dia saja, tapi dia tidak appreciate and tidak nampak dia punya usaha di belakang itu. Yeah. Yeah, betul. Right. It's not put it struggle. And talking about struggle, the challenges. So, first to know, so Sabah has more filmmakers and content creators than ever before. This can be seen especially masa good. It's good when Jason mentioned tadi, what differences can you see during the pandemic and now? We have more content creators because during pandemic semua stay at home doing nothing, jadi banyak tu idea buat content. But are we building audiences that truly appreciate Sabah films?
Well, I mean, that's still something that is a work in progress, developing Sabahan audiences that love Sabahan films, because our Sabahan film history kan is very fragmented. Our first actually Sabahan films yang masuk panggung wayang is dari Borhan nila in 1970s, tapi itu pun sebelum zaman saya juga lah. And then we actually come from a straight to VCD industry. So I actually have a lot of gratitude for filmmakers like Ampal who really paved the way for us before this law. But yes, I think a lot of people are confusing the difference between films between being consumers as well as the actual nature of the industry. So that's why I ended up becoming a film programmer as well, because I think that the issue kalau naman Sabah kan macam kita selalu terfikir tentang production, okay, kita hasilkan itu film. But among our sort of maybe bukan saja weaknesses tapi macam kekurangan macam resources begitu kan, is that we don't really have the resources to distribute, to market, as well as to archive our films. But more importantly is that we need to have a film culture along with the industry so that we are sitting together and watching films together. Kita ada budaya di mana kita boleh itakan macam karaoke, and then after that sing the song. So semua orang dalam satu hall kan macam hari tu di KDCA, wow, when Francis Lamdong came on the stage, it's electric. But we don't necessarily have that yet because a few things. Macam, we have a lot of people in the rural areas kan macam, so the disconnect between cinemas can be very challenging also if you were to think about that future. So for me it's really important to do film clubs as well. Because dia pesta film. Kita punya pesta film pun macam we need to have Sabahan film programmers as well. And why do we need to watch each other's films? Is so that we can build a Sabahan film language and a Sabahan film identity together. Right now, a lot of people think that macam, they can't tell the difference between content creation, macam, entertainment that you get on your phones, or the importance actually of being able to buy a ticket to go to cinemas and actually macam masih meningkatkan kita box office ba. So the box office is actually really, really important. So it's teaching people that, okay, kita bukan bikin film lepas tu macam, bila keluar Netflix, macam senang saja ba. It's not the case actually. So it's really important it's a very big question because it's getting people to, I don't know, for me kan macam, if we can have a football stadium where people or Sabahans are really enjoy kita punya football kan, macam how do we get people to have that same passion and to untuk mendorong kita punya macam young filmmakers to come up? That's something that is still a work in progress that I'm trying to do through Cineba. So I have my own kind of like small film club where we do screenings as well whenever I'm available, so that we can know what other Sabahan films that are doing well. Because actually Sabah punya filmmaker tu hebat. Kalau tinggal Borneo kan, macam actually there are more exciting young filmmakers coming from Sabah. So even in West Malaysia, they know that actually like most of the like strong young filmmakers are coming out are mostly women directors yang kita sa film antarabangsa. And bawa macam like Puchi Purnama Suwa dari Sandakan, Ikin Key Charles, who got a grant from Argentina she's from Kotamarudu, by the way, to make her experimental video yang sudah ditayangkan sa Taiwan, and further. So how do we ensure that this information on our filmmakers gets circulated back? You also need to have more people like me, who understand the achievements and then how to circulate, I guess, their works amongst people so we can champion them knowing their films. Because I think that most of the universities di sini kan, they're tidak berapa tayangkan film Sabah. So the young Sabahan filmmakers, I think a lot of them have no idea who I am or all my works are. So this is something that requires community organizing and other sort of platforms to understand. If you want to grow Sabahan film audiences, we need to watch each other's Sabahan films.
All right. This one is for Velvet. So, Sabahan, I'm very proud of the Latin music, man. Yes, as you can see, from your side as well, so you have hits like Sumanak Sabah, Alamighty. But how hard is it to turn that support into a sustainable career?
Yun, in my honest answer.
Yes, please.
Okay. Macam, it's very hard. I've been doing this for 20 years, and sometimes I question myself up until today, why am I still doing music in Sabah? Sebab doing music in Sabah is actually not sustainable. If you have berapa juta views pun dalam YouTube and all, orang fikir satu view tu kalau kau dapat 15 juta view tu kau million sorry. Jauh panggang dari api. It's actually very hard, and macam with the rapid technology punya pertukaran kan, kami ni pun orang, I consider myself bukan orang muda sudah, sini berumur-umur sudah, and as time pass by, I have to also ikut arus peredaran zaman. So I cannot live with, to those of you yang tidak tahu lah, 20 years ago I joined this reality TV show, Academy Fantasia in Semenanjung, Malaysia. So from there, I think it jumpstart my career as a singer. And looking back, I cannot live with the brand sampai sekarang. I cannot be Velvet AF forever. So over the years, dia kau perlu ikut arus, and with that, it requires effort. It requires writing new stuff. It requires curating your own image as a singer, as a songwriter, as a producer. And all that requires money. Yeah. Jadi, untuk kamu yang mau tahu, untuk berada dalam creative industry ini, it's an investment. Tapi kalau tidak tahu, you will make it or break it. Begitu. That's from my side lah, do. I'm not representing semua artis di Sabah, but that's how I view it if you're based in KK. Sebab we have very little platform to grow. Walaupun resources banyak, walaupun Sabahans dia bilang are all talented, tapi it's not easy to make it.
Okay. We'll get back to one other question there. For the Jess dulu. Do you see yang kan tadi macam perception orang yang doing crafts is more like macam for basic je than actually macam do you see dia macam is this the biggest challenge for you kan macam mana?
Saya start bikin saya punya craft since 2018. So few years kan saya rasa susah betul sebab dia tiada sambutan ba. Satu saya susah mau dapat dia punya bahan, saya susah bikin ini punya, susah mau bikin pusingan duit kan. Tapi masa pandemik saya meletup punan di medsos. Sana saya dapat sales. Jadi saya sadar masa pandemik itu kan saya ada permintaan. Terus saya di mana sudah nih? Apa tidak? Pandemik. Iya. Tapi semua cabaran bahkan gue tanya tadi tuh apa cabaran saya? Cabaran saya tengok terus saya tepan nih. Saya terlupa sudah konsumen cakap. Jepang. Oke, seringan sudah. Cabaran saya nih kan, saya bikin ini dalam tembaga. Jadi bila saya bikin volume yang sedikit, jadi dia punya post kan jualan dia punya harga beza lah sama yang di pasaran yang boleh kasih keluar volume yang besar gitu. Dari hilang lah gitu kan. Jadi bila saya jual si punya craft di Sabah, dia tidak berapa dapat sambutan. Sebab mungkin dapat rasa mahal. Kan kau beli sama si Jess. Bagus saya beli yang Shopee saja kan jauh gap harga dia. Nah itulah sebenarnya sen sebenarnya. Dan syukur juga lepas pandemik itu kan ada satu agensi bawa saya pergi KL. Dan saya start di KL. Di sana saya mula bertumbuh dan gain kepercayaan yang saya boleh buat nih benda.
Okay. Got it. What I want to talk about just now is about the paying culture. Bayar untuk mendapatkan hikmat ataupun item. So, in your sense, memang susah ke orang mau actually macam bayar beli your products.
Bukan juga susah, cuma diorang nampak itu gap hargaan. Kan kalau mau beli mahal, kalau boleh dapat murah begitu ba. Saya paham juga lah. Yeah.
And Velvet, you did your first gig di KK. When was it? 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
And it was a sold out. Were you surprised to see that it was a sold out?
Actually, I was surprised because I thought macam masa manja so manja with free concerts kan. So when I did a showcase in KK, I thought macam okay, let's try do something in a very small scale. And what we did was just market it through social media. And also macam kalau dalam Spotify itu kan kau boleh tengok kau punya algorithm ba, who listens to your song dari sebelah mana semua. So macam KK was like kind of like the highest kalau di Sabah. So we chose a place lah. So when the tickets were sold out, I was actually caught by surprise because the showcase was self-funded, and I told my manager macam not umubot ni. Macam, you know, you gotta work and earn, and when you earn the money, baka kasi habis lagi just to market yourself again. And it feels like you're just floating lah, waiting for another big ship to sada catch you, begitu. But from that showcase, I'm actually, you know, quite happy with the turnout. And dari sana pun it boosts macam more ano lah, macam kaya, you know, actually I've been wanting to, bukan quit lah, macam rest from the music scene kan. At times I feel like, okay, where's this music going? Tapi I treat music these days as my kalau yang lain lepas kerja kau mau pergi karaoke untuk kasih hilang stress kan. So music to me is a place where I release all my stress. I write, I love writing. So from my writings, I would turn it into a song. And bila sinampa, okay, they like my music, and that boosts me more lah untuk mau menulis. Tapi from that showcase, actually, I lost some more money than I didn't gain anything, okay? I just gained experience and a platform. Kesian kan? I mean, it's reality kanila, tol. Siapa-siapa yang tahu pak, ini bukan untuk glamour-glamour di Sabah, okay? But okay lah, we should have more events yang berbayar, biar lang 10 ringgit kan? At least kita tahu orang mau datang, mau tengok, begitu. Daripada lo kasih feed them with free music class, sama juga nih.
Dikira macam coming fee betul kan kalau join competition.
Betul.
When you pay something, you're committed to that cause, and I mean, when you're willing to pay for that much money, they willing to see you mah.
It's nice to
Very
see.
support your artist.
It's nice to see orang-orang kita support artis sendiri tau. Sebab saya sangat tahu orang kita kadang-kadang kalau dia nampak ko penyanyi, sebut support doang dia gitu. Begitu. Macam we have that ada inferiority lah. I don't know apa. Tapi it's like that lah, I think, in Sabah. So I feel like kalau kamu mau kan, it's so important to support apa-apa art yang datang dari our own state tau. Macam baru-baru ni, I'm also a paying customer ba. I went to Suganda Epic and bring in to watch, you know, the finals gitu. Just because I wanna experience. Saya mau tengok, pandai ka drang organize ni benda. I mean, smooth ka tidak. I wanna be able to, bukan mengumpat, criticize. Kan? Biasanya orang akan criticize melalui social media kan. Tapi saya mau pergi tengok, okay kan tidak? Begitu. So I paid for the ticket.
Okay. So, Nadira, you mentioned about Netflix tadi kan. Macam we can see the Sabah films in cinemas kan. Macam not really doing so well in the box office begitu. Does this perception of will it be on Netflix macam ada effect to the macam buy ticket culture?
Okay, so for this one, I can't really speak for myself because, well, I just completed my first feature film this year. That should be a ballad of the half boy, so that's gonna be coming out in cinemas next year. So that will be really a test of my mental. But then I'll tell you what I know about the cinema industry and the cinema cartel because saya antara KL dengan saya tinggal antara KL dengan sini. So it's always a case of kind of just like, you know, small fish, big paga that they like to say kan. So the Malaysian cinemas are actually designed around Peninsula Malaysia. Not even just Peninsula Malaysia, but Malay male stories. And so the cinema cartels are very much embedded in the Peninsula Malaysia way, actually Klang Valley Bowl way of telling stories, and they all talk amongst one another. Apa yang saya tidak puas hati kan ialah macam why I became a filmmaker in the first place was because I fell in love with foreign cinema. It was such a it was such a safe space for me because your parents is babdiada jalan kan macam your parents can just drop you off there, and then you can go and watch a movie and then pas to si pergi center point sa cari lagi from the DVD bargain bin, as I found a lot of Hollywood films macam the old musicals Gene Kelly punya cerita and like Southeast Asian punya cerita hantu. But that kind of somehow gave me these delusions of grandeur that Sabah, that a career in film was possible. Man, if I met younger Nadira now, I would just hug her and cry because it's just not entirely the case. But now we are at a different time where we are so lucky to have our own Sabahan cinema chain, 10-star cinemas. And not to speak for somebody else, but yang saya tahu kan, because the one of the founders of 10-star cinemas used to be the head of Wajib Tayang, meaning that you had somebody from Bawal who was the one who says, how do we keep Malaysian films in cinemas? He's the one running the policy to keep Malaysian films in cinemas. But a lot of the other cinemas, cartels said, like other cinemas law said to him, oh, we're not going to keep Borneo films in cinemas. You're too small because we have a very majoritarianist way of looking at at representation in this country. So, macam if you're a minority, then you're already predestined to fail ba in that sense, and it shouldn't be the case. So Malaysian, so the but it's so now it's like okay, we don't have a standalone cinema anymore. People think that is impossible. For me kan, macam my dream is that if we were to say that we're genuinely proud of Sabahan films and that we want to, because when you go to a cinema nowadays, kan, macam actually the cinemas need to be selling an experience. So kalau di KL kan, you're on a IMAX, you're on an Atrium. They have partnerships with mattresses. They have cinemas with playgrounds so the kids can go and play down there. Macam gila wa, you can pay 150 per ticket so you can botting there and watch like a giant movie. But when you go to kita punya cinema, even just GSC, kita tidak TGV. Araw kada TGV. We just have GSC di sini kan. The cinemas are already predestined or pre-programmed to say that, okay, we sell Malay films, Meranjal films, everybody also watches them. But in Sabah and Sarawak, you also just have to watch Malay films lah. So when we have to enter our cinemas into these national chains, when we have to enter our films into these national chains, we're expected to compete with them, to compete with the distribution. And we don't even know yet. Our filmmakers are still learning. You can ask Chester after this with his experience with Mandela. It's gonna be to our detriment if we are expected as Salahans with our small resources to be able to make the kind of box office numbers that Semenanjung does. But I really believe that it's possible to calculate if we are able to understand how many films will Sabah be producing a year. Because right now all our films are being funded just by FINAS. Okay, how is that? That's taxpayers' money that is going to fund each one of our feature films. So when our films test well at the box office, that goes back, into the country's taxes pa. And the thing is just like the streaming platforms don't necessarily offer that same kind of visible return. They won't even tell the filmmakers like how many views that they got on like Netflix and that kind of thing. So it is really important to have a cinema as an institution because 10-star cinemas can actually keep those who can and will have done it, keep Sabahan films in cinemas long enough. But I hope that there's one thing that the government can support or creative like people who support the creative economy can support is that I think like what Velvet was talking about, macam like people not knowing yet how to go and be music attending audience, concert going audiences, how to be cinema going audiences. Even that needs to be has to be cultivated. So my big dream is that if we have a big, beautiful cinema, 10-star cinemas in the heart of KK. So everybody who comes to Kota Kinabalu, anybody comes to Sabah will say like, wow, Sabah has their own cinema and you can go there and watch Sabahan films. So it's a really big asset that we have, a Sabahan chain. And if people understand, it's actually a race. It's not actually macam, okay, kau bikin film and then after that, si boleh tengok bila-bila saja. The most important thing for all Malaysian films kan, the first 4 days, you have to go and watch a film in the first 4 days. Sebab kalau tidak kan, when they don't do well, even if they get wajib tayang, they will start pulling it from the theaters. Because there's a larger complex where Malaysia actually creates a lot of films. At one point, you were creating 80 films a year, but 80 films a year, and you try to calculate the entire calendar. Oh my God, gila. But if you were to look at macam how to calculate and connect the dots and how to, like start, okay, mungkin Sabah bikin film with 3 film satu tahun. How can we get people to know, actually yang ini macam perbandingan loh. Kau tahu kan kalau kita tengok itu film sekarang kan kurang loh dia orang punya box office. So that's what I mean to say. If we can champion, our filmmakers the way that we champion our football teams or our musicians and that kind of thing, kita po Sabah menang. Sebab kalau tidak, di Semenanjung itu sinema semua akan anggap dia ada orang mau tengok film Sabah. Padahal orang tidak tahu saja. Dan dia orang tidak tahu that like, that it's not a matter of just like, oh, if you had a nice, big, beautiful cinema where people understand this is how we boost our Sabahan cinema and our identity, I think that there's a chance that we can be not just sustainable, but we can export our culture.
Okay, good point there. Okay, still on mau Sabahon na smart nahan. Do you think that had the creative industry in Sabah found its own voice, atau kita masih lagi trying to fit into someone else's?
I think that's a come see, come sell kind of situation where when you talk about feature films and they talk about that commercial aspect, then we are expected to sort of fit into the Semenanjung kind of mold. If I want to talk about Sabahan representation in Malaysian cinema, oh my God, I need a whole other afternoon for that. Because Peninsula Malaysia thinks that the best people to play Borneans on screen are always West Malaysians. And then you have films like Takop Lahadapu, which is sad because they have to go through CMO, they have to get the SPP, they have to go through the Sabah Tourism Board, and they came here and they shot a film about the Tanduo attacks, and they were advised not to use any Sabahan accents. And when the Sabahan accents comes with the Sabahan actors, so kalau po jadi pemuzik kan, macam actually Sabahan musicians can go national in a certain way because kalau dia orang ni tiada logam, tapi Semenanjung they're still like icky about our language, about the way that we talk. They don't know what our Sabahan people actually look like. But okay, so the difference between making a feature film is that because there are expectations for it to be commercial. So you do see certain films like Mandara did the same thing as well. They will put the Western, but they put this whole thing about just put a Malay man in it and then it will make money thing. I think it's just a problem for the whole country. Like, no, you still have to come up with a good story. You still have to edit well. You still have to craft great narrative. But I put a lot of hope in our young filmmakers who are making short films. Why I champion short films so much is it because they can develop their own original voice. They can go as samahan as they want. They can, and you need to be able to cultivate that voice because film is one of those industries where the technology behind it, that lighting. Sorry. This is constant lighting. Sorry. It's really important for us to hear our own voice because I've caught some young filmmakers already. They're making their film pendek. And I look at them and say, kenapa kau cerita macam cerita Melayu eh? They don't realize it. They don't realize that they're copying other people. They don't realize that they're trying to be Hollywood. But actually, to be internationally recognized, gun, all people want is for you to be yourself. To make great art, people want to know that you can be yourself and authentic and get them access to a part of the world or a human experience that nobody has ever heard of before or is so local, as Ilan likes to put it, go deep local to go global. So in terms of cultivating that Sabahan young voice, it's important. And I'm already seeing some young people go like we get told, we can shoot we can shoot a hanto o dos kaya ba film pwede kala pa to be commercial. There's no such thing as a commercial short film. It's just art. And that is how we're gonna be able to you need to make a lot of really good short films to make a great feature film. And right now there's that gap there that we're trying to like bring I don't know, to try to bring closer together that.
Untuk jazz sendiri, um, kalau jazz tengok macam jazz bercraft gitu kan. Macam ada kawan orang tengok macam bila dia tengok jazz punya produk apa semua. Ini macam bukan di Sabah, ini macam Sarawak. Yeah. Are we still at that level? Kaya macam orang masih tidak tahu whether this craft is actually Sabahan and bukan dari tempat lain.
Okay. Kalau fat yang mereka bentuk bukan desain. Actually, bukan juga kita tiada voice kita sendiri yang betul-betul Sabahan kan. Kita punya kekuatan kan dari motif-motif yang macam kalau dari liwan lain dia punya corakan, dari modul lain. Kita sebenarnya kita buat. Tapi sebagai tukang galang dan penyaga yang mau hidup. Actually kadang-kadang kan terpaksa juga mau ikut nih apa nih yes terpaksa kita ikut tren. Pertama kita mau fast selling, kedua kita mau tarik perhatian generasi muda supaya dorang ngapa nih terus dorang minat ba. Contohnya kalau sekarang punya generasi kan dorang suka yang minimalis begitu punya desain. Jadi saya akan buat sebagai untuk tarik minat dorang. Lepas tu yang lain saya buat banyak reka bentuk yang bagi dia pilihan. Dan macam mana saya mau kasih highlight kita punya Sabahan punya identity dari storytelling. Yang design to kan sila kasi to si punya collectors. Kenapa saya buat begini? Dan adalah cerita di sana. Ya, begitu.
Okay. Fulfilled, in music lah, I mean, have you found your voice?
Kalau kau bilang sewa 40 tahun and then found my voice, bagus sakit.
Well, I actually have. I mean, like I said, I think check.
Really kind and what this will be always.
What did I? Okay. Yeah, I have. And as for me, Symphony music is as much as I want to. I do portray macam Sabahan punya elements in my music though because I like it, and I'm so proud of our rich culture kan. But saya punya soul betul-betul is into writing songs yang has got depth. I love producing. I like spending hours, making sounds kan. So, macam apa kata soalan ko saya. Boleh saya nabas sama mo ada benci.
Have you found your voice?
Yes, I found my voice. So my sound is all based on macam everything I see around me, life experiences, based on what I observe around me. So from there, saya tukar into music. So macam now that I'm older and wiser, I create music not to please other people, but to actually, it's more of like to fix my mental well-being. It's an outlet for me actually. So it's like an expensive hobby. I spend a lot on making music. Tapi when it's out, it feels I feel like okay, I did this, I feel great about it begitu.
And I love seeing younger people who shares the same passion in Sabah.
Yes.
In Sabah, we have a lot of talented singers. Banyak yang cantik suara, pandai buat lagu. Tapi for me, kalau dia tidak akan nurture, dia tidak akan build into satu produk yang boleh dijual sama orang lain ataupun menarik orang lain masuk Sabah untuk tengok kita punya quality music, tidak guna juga. Kenapa? Pasal kita perlu quality. And to be honest with you, Han, kalau di Sabah, susah semua cari orang yang boleh mix lagu. It's always like this. When you're done with your recordings and all, you have to send to KL to mix, to get the song mixed and mastered. Begitu, baru angker di KK. Jadi, yeah, we need to build from ground zero. Tapi, bukan semua orang passionate kau dalam music kan. And it's not easy to get grants. The pay in Sabah for singers pun macam baru kau bayar 500, saya mahal juga. Dia bilang, it's like that. Oh, begitu. So, it's quite hard, especially for those who baru mau start, baru mau berjinap-jinap dalam music. And honestly, karena macam kalau budak-budak saya bilang dia mau jadi penyanyi, saya, janganlah, susah mau hidup. Betul, kan? It's like that, okay? So, because they don't know the struggle, they only see the end product. They don't know what goes behind closed doors. Yeah.
Since you mentioned about the young musicians trying to venture into this industry, kan? I think sekarang the trend is you go viral online, get famous, but ini boleh kena translate ke apa kan? Boleh kena convert. Does it convert to itu something macam opportunity?
Actually boleh tau. Actually boleh. Kalau kau benar. Betul. Tapi we don't know how it works. Kalau di Sabah. So at the end of the day, label besar dari KL juga yang datang. Atau budak-budak Sabah, KOL yang famous. Begitu. Jadi kita perlu ada orang yang sangat pandai dalam ni perkara juga. Yang, orang yang pandai mengatur KOL begitu. Dan I feel like we should learn lah. Apa orang semenanjung ada. Cara diorang mengatur. Sebab orang kita ni, orang-orang kati ni ada ego dia tersendiri. Kan, bila sejak semua kau bayu, sebenarnya bagus lah kan, mau cakap my movie tidak bagus gitu kan. Yeah, we have that ego tau. Jadi at times, macam I think kita perlu kasih lo sikit kita punya ego untuk mau build the community. Sebab sometimes when you're already up there, kau fikir kau besar, betul ba? But actually, kau boleh kena tam dalam bila-bila saja. Yeah.
Untuk Jess Lohan, still on young generation kan, what do you think is the biggest challenge untuk mau tarik dorang untuk minat these traditional crafts and arts? Biggest challenge untuk tarik minat dorang lah, untuk develop minat dorang, supaya dorang berminat in this traditional arts and crafts.
Maksudnya yang ke generasi muda kan?
Ya, betul.
Biggest challenge dia, kebanyakan nih generasi muda nih dia masih lagi perlu banyak pendataan pasar kita punya culture lah. Sebab kan yang strawberry punya generasi kan sekarang yang dorang tidak berapa tahu cerita macam ya kita punya adat semalah motif-motif. Kalau tanya ramai lagi yang tidak tahu. Kalau tanya ini dari mana? Dorang tidak berapa. Kebanyakan lah yang muda-muda. Jadi cabaran dia macam mana kita mau kasih minat. Macam mana mau kasih minat. Itulah bagi dorang mereka bentuk yang ikut dorang punya kesukaan. Terus kasih selit lah sikit kita punya motif-motif. Terus auto dorang pendetanya tuh. Dorang tanya, kenapa yang ini dari mana ya? Ya, terus kalau dorang dari
dari Tambunan begitu kan. Macam baru-baru nih saya pergi berjualan ko ng DKL. Terus ada nih orang-orang Tambunan yang mungkin orang jarang pulang, yang muda-muda lang. So, mana satu desain tambunannya semua beli, saya dari sana, yang begitu ba. Jadi dari sana kan kita boleh kasi dorang minat untuk belajar dorang punya asal usul.
That's good. That's good. And from there, from the development, are we doing enough to tell our stories through our own perspectives?
Okay. Well, I mean, this is not a question that I can answer for other people. And I think I've also spoken a lot about our film community and other people. And I don't really talk about my own work enough because I'm so stretched that I tend to support a lot of people and sometimes much but the truth is like I've very rarely gotten enough support myself. So one thing that is a huge part of my journey as a Sabahan filmmaker is that I grew up without seeing. I like the first time I saw a Sabahan on a big screen was because I had made the film myself, in Silent Riot. And I think a lot of us remember as well. That when you go to school, kan luar kamu belajar tentang anything. You didn't learn anything about being Sabahan when we were growing up, kan? Because we grew up before there was like social media. And so I think that there was always that harder there for me. It's just like going to the cinema. It's like, kenapa? Macam, why are we being told that Malaysia is Malay, Indian, and Chinese? Sampai macam dia jadi satu konspirasi ba? And so the biggest challenge that I had as well, because when I first moved back, I was studying in Australia. I was in the States. Shopma. My first internships were in New York. I was like interning with an Oscar-winning an Oscar-nominated documentary filmmaker, and it's not that I threw it away, but memang saya tahu niat saya mau bikin film Sabah, saya mau bikin cerita Sabah because that was that my memories and my upbringing in Sabah was emblazoned in my mind about. So it was always about thinking, how do I create a Sabahan film language? How do I create a Sabahan film style? And tell a story in the sequel that was just Sabahan. Tapi because the industry bloomed like berapa berkembang di Sabah type tu kan, so I moved to KL. And we moved to KL and they're like, oh, you're from Sabah, welcome to Malaysia. And then it became so hard for me to pitch my stories because you have to give them an education that like Malaysia wasn't formed in 1957. Macam to tell them there's just difference between Sabah and Sarawak. Pening kepala. You can't even agree between East and West Malaysia what a story is because there was a media blackout on Borneo so that you could have one of the longest running governments in the world. And so the weight that I had on my shoulders, kan bukan saja untuk bikin film, and then not having enough crew, and then not having enough equipment. Mama saya pun setarik dia jadi sebagai production manager. Kawan saya setarik dia jadi my makeup artist. I was constantly having to look over my shoulder. I'm the director. I'm the assistant director. I had to look around my shoulder, like, do they know what they're doing? And it's exhausting, even for my feature film. Even for my feature film, I'm my own producer because I couldn't find a producer that had experience with festivals and also a producer that understands Borneo stories. And it's not that I need a producer that understands Borneo stories, but by being East Malaysian, just by being East Malaysia, we already challenged West Malaysia's idea of Malaysia because their idea of Malaysia is Peninsula Malaysia. So that created immense pressure on me because it's not like singing where ataupun making artism of props because benda ni macam tangible, kau boleh nilai ba sedap ke tidak, does it feel great, does it look great? But with films you have to convince somebody else that your lived experience is real before you can even get any funding to tell the story. And then when you make the film in Sabah where you have a lot less resources, tiba-tiba dia orang pala cakap, oh, the quality is not very good. But the challenge as well was that why I got into programming film screen news was because people in West Malaysia they still don't know how to watch Borneo films because they can't relate to it. The younger generation, Galadis, Spook like Simanang Gapa, the younger generation they really care about diversity and inclusion and equality. It's easier to pitch to them. The older ones are just like, what is that? When I made Silent Riot for the first time, experienced film writers and film critics, they had never seen Sabahans on screen before. And so the film writer only wrote about my subtitles, just the quality of my subtitles. So that's when I started to, okay, sa kasi kumpulkan macam chika Borneo, filmmake pa like short films from Borneo, and then do the screening so that people can understand that we actually have a Borneo film identity and a Borneo film language. So my challenge is that I'm stretched thin. I am trying to build, trying to help the younger filmmakers. I'm trying to do my own film on my own accord. And this is, like my then budget for my film is under 1 million. But like we are not playing with small sums of money. And I think in some ways there is a misalignment here because we have so many universities that have film institutions. And so we are churning out more film students that way, and if to come into an industry that doesn't even that is not stable enough. Like we had SAC 3 last time to produce animation students. That was deeply problematic because it was so disconnected. Because you're trying to get macam bukan saja students that are interested in animation, tapi budak yung nalgor yang that don't have enough jobs kan. Government will take them now go study animation. Where's the animation industry in Sabah? The other animation industry Sabah. Jeffrey can tell you how much he struggled even just to get heard, just to get relieved by these institutions. Because the Sabah film institutions, kan animation institutions, sorry, bukan sa manunumpa. All of this is just for the evidence so that we can evolve and grow together, kan? We have this thing like what Velvet said tadi, macam, oh, so I get that as well. Oh, bikin film. Siapa bikin film ba? But it's not so much ego, I think, as it is insecurity. Big egos are also rooted in deep insecurity, and it's also not having that appreciation. The problem with our film institutions, kan BC, is that so much of it is just focused on technical product. So in essence, but they don't watch films. So you're creating these laborers, but you're not trying to create, like people who understand our stories, and our stories are precious. How is it I'm going to KDCA and people are saying, oh, kita punya kung bahasa mo mapupos sudah, kita punya adaro mapupos sudah. But when it comes to the people who are carrying our history, are trying to research and carry our own history and our own culture and develop a Sabahan film language, like I said, people think that it's just something that, oh, you made a film, bila streaming. So again, we need to develop audiences that know how to watch films. It's not as simple as, oh, press play. No. How do you watch a film? How do you sit and appreciate it? To me, macam a film, when you go and watch a film, it's like a prayer. Because it's the only time you can go into the cinema. Kan orang kasi, they just put on their phone for 2 hours and they sit there and they're with it and you have that shared moment with that. The danger globally now is that young people don't know how to sit through a 19-minute film because the reels have damaged our race. I don't like talking about content creation and films in the same way. And I don't like talking about trends, and I don't like talking about virality. I want to talk about how are we going to make films, art, music, crafts that are going to stand the test of time. Sure, you get 200,000 views the next day. But what if there was an asteroid that hit us? And then archaeologists have to come back and go like, what is Sabah? What does Sabah look like? I don't know. You have to check Instagram. Oh, tira, Instagram sudah. Gila ba? So this is also about how we are made to survive and as people, as a civilization. So we're not crafting all these Sabahan stories just to show Sidibe. We're doing this so that our people have continuity, so that we understand how to appreciate our land, how to appreciate our wildlife, and can teach people that arts isn't just something that you consume. Pida. OITOM is like, they can tell you, it's the ingredients. It is the quality of the ingredients, but it's also what are you putting in your body. If you're watching crap, you're going to be thinking like crap. You're going to be treating people like crap. So the process of making art is very, very much spiritual. It's about suruan. How do we tell stories respectfully? How do we cultivate a community, a society that cares about each other and cares about the land? That is why I work so hard to figure out how to develop a Sabahan voice. So when West Malaysians tell me, oh, yeah, we want you to do a Kamaan story, but can you make it more Malaysian? Meaning West Malaysian? They don't know what it's like to have your culture almost run extinct. And so that's why it's so personal to me.
Still on the preserving culture, but it would be interesting to know that how this creative industry can generate more jobs and economic opportunities in Sabah. Over.
So we talk about apakan how it can generate. I think we need to cultivate lah our creative people. Dan sometimes, yeah, not sometimes, we want to represent macam Sabah lah kan. And kita mau memperkenalkan kita punya budaya sama orang di luar. So biasanya what all the artists would do is to create Sabahan songs yang ada beat-beat Sabahan. It's nice, sangat-sangat nice. But I think we can do more than that juga. Contohnya macam okay, we can come up with Malay songs. Sebab kenapa? Kita punya Melayu sama Semenanjung Malaysia punya Melayu sangat-sangat berbeza. I did not grow up listening to rock attack. Tapi we were more macam kita lagi dengar lagu Indonesia dari lagu KL begitu kan. So saya rasa kita we need to nurture all these artists begitu. And I think kan dari government lah plays an important role lah. Perlu ada intervention juga sebab we can't move with our own capacity. Kalau kau jalan sebagai seorang artis satu saja, a songwriter, an artisan, begitu susah. So dia perlu ada satu ekosistem yang kuat, yang ada passionate people untuk mau maneuver the ship. But orang yang the right person lah, bukan orang yang mau ambil kesempatan dengan the resources that we have. Dan I feel like we can go so far, we can, tapi it would probably take a while lah to get that standard and that quality begitu. Tapi I believe we can lah, pelan-pelan.
Oh, still government. So this is a question to all. What would you like to see, like just one policy or initiative from the government to further develop the creative industry in Sabah? Okay.
Maybe grants. Tapi grant is something yang sangat susah mau dapat. If you don't have paperwork yang cun, kan kerajaan mau bikot duit free dan when you don't have a proper paperwork. So kau perlu ajar itu artis untuk mau buat paperwork dulu macam mana. And artis ini bukan left brainer, right brainer. Mana lah kami belajar pasal tu benda kan. So at the end of the day, kau masih perlu semua ni tau. And you need macam okay, when you sudah bikin music, you need to market your product. Jadi, to market your product also requires an amount of money. Begitu. Jadi, macam saya cakap, dia perlu ada campur tangan lah. But kalau if you made it dengan macam based on luck kan, banyak juga yang lucky lah kan who made it. Itu bagus. Tapi not everyone has the opportunity or chance to do so. Yeah.
Just for that.
Saya rasa thank you very much ko tengah cakap saya punya masalah pribadi. Sebab kan saya punya masalah yang bikin paperwork. Saya paling tidak tahu. Jadi selama 8 tahun ini kan bukan juga saya tidak ikut lama belajar. Saya belajar juga. Saya pernah juga pergi pitching. Tapi mungkin ada lagi beberapa hal yang perlu belajar lah itulah sebab tidak berapa tidak tidak berapa bertua. Jadi saya rasa apa ya soalan tadi itu
Kalau beli misalnya ada one effort ataupun one policy ataupun initiative from the government.
dari mana
Hmm.
untuk saya punya part yang terap tangan nih memang perlu apa nih kerjasama government lah untuk sama-sama bagi peluang pekerjaan sama terutama golongan muda untuk bagi dorang workshop supaya dorang dapat mengasah bakat. Ini golongan muda dorang punya masalah nih kan dorang takut pergi belajar nih bidang saya. Satu dorang bilang susah. Saya tanya saya punya anak sendiri. Mak susah betul dia bilang. Lepas itu kan dorang pikir ini tidak menjamin masa depan. Tiada pulangan yang banyak. Tidak berapa menguntungkan dorang bilang. Jadi macam mana kita mau kasih bagi peluang pekerjaan untuk ini apa bidang tertangan kan? Kami perlukan center satu pusat tempat kami kerja sama-sama. Ada fasilitas sana, mesin, dan kami boleh kongsi. Sebab dalam bidang kami ini kan kami memerlukan tools yang tidak berapa murah. Ya, untuk menghasilkan produk yang kita boleh panggil premium, kita mana ada tuh barang. Satu lagi bahan mentah. Sebab kalau harapkan dari sales saja kan, tidak juga berapa jalan. Jadi saya harap juga government ataupun apa-apa agensi yang boleh kolaborasi, ya, center tempat kami berkumpul untuk bikin satu apa nih berkarya bersama-sama supaya kami dapat volume yang lagi besar dan boleh menjana ekonomi boleh share sama ramai lagi.
Kira dia macam one stop center, macam satu hub begitu.
Iya.
Okay. Nadia, how about you?
Well, so far I feel very grateful for some of the support already that the government has created, like given with the filmmakers laws. But I mean, I know that with Sabah, with Chesto, with Katak as well, Jeffrey, like they have lobbied very, very, very hard to work together with the Sabah government. So saya rasa bangga lah yang tahun ni macam KDCA kan Sabah dalam TV Sabah bukan and they had that beautiful LED screen outside. I say beautiful, but I'm just like, because it's cool. I'm just bilang lagi ko, the first time kan yang saya pergi tengok Homina dun, yang the film kan, siya melembak ang si Pulux may kawan si penangis ka, because this is the first Sabahan film premiere that I've ever been to. And then to be able to go and see on the LED screen Sabahan film trailers, like wow, that's great. So I think that we're on the right footing as well. I mean, Elon has worked so hard to represent Sabah and at Finas. Every table, he's Manjong. Don't forget Borneo. Don't forget Sabah. And Elon has had like an even more difficult film career because like she didn't even get to shoot in Sabah, because she was brought outside, so the government recognizing that we're here slogging away because we love where we come from. Macam orang gila ba? Sabah love Sabah. Tapi memang like you can feel it in your body. We're crazy like that, but it's so real and it's so tangible. So okay, one I think taking seriously Constar Cinemas as a hub, as an institution that is going to be where Sabahan films will get shown. Like that is our culture, that is our ata. In terms of policy making, I think we need to take digital safety very seriously. Because there are a lot of developments that are happening very, very quickly. And I think that a lot of people are not prepared for them. So things like AI, well, everybody's so excited about AI, but AI is actually really, really dangerous for so many reasons, not just for the environment, their connections with war on genocide, but it's also especially dangerous for women. the threat of, sorry my language, but the threat of pornography changing the way that, because it's being consumed by so many young people, it is changing the way that our boys and our men interact or think about themselves. It's really dangerous because I take the social responsibility of a filmmaker very, very seriously. Ma. O because ito film kan, orang tinggal kan, monkey see, monkey do. So I don't want censorship. I hope that Sabah can be better than Semenanjung. Semenanjung ni sensor itu tiap boleh cakap ini, boleh cakap. But we have to remember that when we talk about the arts, kan, we are trying to develop an intellectual Sabahan society. Saya bukan bilang macam intellectual macam, wah saya sudah belajar tinggi di Harvard. No, that's not my point. Sebab kan kalau kita cakap pasal technology kan, being able to make our crafts, everything, all of that has always been technology. Weaving, that's technology. All of that is technology. But how do we capitalize on all of those strengths to build a safe, like the industry has to be safe also. Jangan cakap macam, okay, you just want to make, okay, kita mau bagi dana, kita mau sokong macam Sabah punya youth, begitu saja. There has to be a balance between East Coast and West Coast. When are I want to see Bajau films as well. I want to see Iranian films. I want to see, like films from all the different communities in Sabah. Bukan saja macam Kadazan Luzon. Because we're lucky in that sense that we have a cultural institution in KDCA. But when we talk about macam uniting Sabah kan, it shouldn't be a cliche. The way that we learn to respect one another and treat each other better is by having curiosity and being able to hear each other's stories. So I hope that those policies are that who are we going to reach out to kan? Bukan saja the people yang visible tapi yang marginal. Terutama niya macam di kampung, di East Coast, semua kira-kira stateless ka, queer ka, apa, but that their stories get to be heard and that we have safer sets. One thing I need to emphasize on is that the film industry, like many industries, is not very safe for women. That's one thing that I have noticed. Berapa kali sudah saya kena buat laporan polis because I kena stalk lah, kena death threats, kena apa. Because that's what happens with being a visible woman. And so these policies have to consider bukan saja safety dari and macam sustainability dari segi macam, okay, are we getting paid? Can I put a roof over my head? Can I pay the bills? It's also, you have to pay attention to also who is not being heard, who is not at the table right now. Those are the people maybe that we need to bring to the forefront. I don't know if government has that responsibility, but it can be something that is policy driven. It can be something that was for responsibility and the thought process behind curators as well. Don't just go for the people who are the obvious choices. Think about the people who are on the sidelines as well. I hope that all of us get to read because they're gonna give us the 360 of Sabah stories. And not just what we've known all along. There's so much to discover in Sabah. But only way we're going to figure out how to do that is to make sure that nobody gets left behind. So I actually want to add a little bit to what Elon said. And something that maybe can be tangible here is that, okay, so the problem also with macam a lot of these institutions are trying to generate artists. You need an ecosystem ba? Bukan setiap orang yang sayang film terpaksa like mesti jadi filmmaker. Actually, you need film writers. You need people who can write about music. Then, okay, so if maybe Daily Express had, writers that can actually.
So let's make.
They used to do it poetry from schools, remember?
My aunt used to write for Daily Express and she wrote film reviews as well. And so I think that even if there was a section in the newspaper, the last remaining newspaper in Sabah, that actually, if you had a writer that could write critically about music, about film, because the problem actually art, film, music, arts, culture, period, that knows how to break things down. We have lost the art of being able to dissect the arts because sekarang everybody's using Spotify, YouTube Music, it's macam we just pour through all of it and then we remember none of it and then we don't process any of it. So even if like Daily Express had dedicated writers that would really, really do so much to not just memalukan artists but get people don't know how to think about art. So I think that would be a really special way. Young people should know that that's a possible job. That job can be created for young people. So that would be very.
Ricardo, thank you very much. And our panel members, Nadira, Jess, and Velda. Can we give them another round of applause, please?